In criminal organizations, it's common for members to turn informants for the police. Typically, these are lower-ranking members seeking to reduce their sentences. However, David Atwell's story is unique to become a police informant. Unlike others, he didn't flip due to criminal charges, but to change his life, do what he believed was morally right, and earn $500,000 in the process. David Atwell was born in Scarborough, Ontario in 1965 into a middle-class family and grew up in the motorcycle club-loving culture of the 1960s. The 60s were a unique time for motorcycle clubs. Almost 2 decades after World War II, the effects were still felt worldwide, and motorcycle clubs were more popular than ever. Hollywood began producing major biker films regularly, making it trendy to join a motorcycle club. Unsurprisingly, Atwell began riding bikes at an early age, a skill that would shape his future. Before this, he worked as a bouncer during his teens. Though he wasn't the largest guy, he was smart, and it wasn't long before he landed a decent security job, working for some of Toronto's elite. It was a good job that suited him perfectly, according to his colleagues, but his love for bikes ultimately led him down a different path. While still working in security, Atwell became acquainted with members of a Toronto-based biker club called Paradise Riders and befriended one of their leaders. By 1998, David Atwell was recruited into the Paradise Riders by Donnie Peterson, the then secretary of the club. His recruitment was also sponsored by the vice president, Douglas Miles, which was a crucial endorsement. At that time, Atwell held a private investigator license with the Ontario Provincial Police and tried to avoid any illegal activities. Fortunately, his sponsor, Douglas Miles, supported his decision, allowing him to continue his security job while rising through the Paradise ranks. However, everything changed in December 2000. The Paradise Riders decided to patch over into the notorious HELLS Motorcycle Club at the request of National President Walter Stadnick, who offered Ontario biker gangs the opportunity to join the largest and most powerful biker club. It was a controversial move, especially in Ontario, so a vote was held to decide whether to stay as Paradise Riders or join the HELLS Angels. The vote was close, with those in favor winning by 51% to 49%. Atwell, influenced by his friends, voted in favor. Atwell was excited about the decision, believing the HELLS Angels would be a larger version of the Paradise Riders, with the only significant change being the patch on their backs. However, he was about to enter a vastly different world. Along with bikers from other gangs such as the Vagabonds, the Lobos, and the infamous Satan's Choice, the selected Paradise Riders traveled to the HELLS Angels mother clubhouse to be initiated. This instantly made the HELLS Angels the #1 biker club in Ontario, with the Greater Toronto area having the highest concentration of HELLS Angels chapters in the world. Atwell got lost on his way to the clubhouse, and when he finally arrived, he was ordered by his national president from Paradise to serve his superiors at HELLS Angels. According to his own account, David Atwell went from hanging out with a group of guys who shared his biking interest to cleaning tables and serving food to the members of the new gang he had just joined. He realized he had to be somewhat submissive to gain the trust of the higher-ranking HELLS Angels. His job as a security guard helped him overcome that challenge, so he had no trouble settling in. In fact, he enjoyed the first few months. He once said, "There would be a cool beer on the table before my butt hit the seat cushion." Unfortunately, he quickly realized that keeping the HELLS Angels patch was more difficult than earning it. Atwell noticed a significant financial disparity among members, which led to multiple personal feuds and smear campaigns, with members trying to get others kicked out. He managed to avoid expulsion and steadily rose through the ranks. By 2002, he began participating in the drug dealing operations. At this point, Atwell was integral to the Angels' cocaine distribution around Toronto. While he wasn't directly selling cocaine, he did sell some drugs to a woman on one occasion, a decision that would change his life forever. On April 4, 2002, while at a HELLS Angels clubhouse, a woman who worked there approached him asking to buy some drugs. Unsuspecting, Atwell brought out what she requested, only for her to reveal that she was an informant. Atwell and other members were arrested on the spot and charged with drug dealing. David Atwell spent the next 20 months on bail, facing huge legal costs that forced him to live with his dad to save money. He managed to pay off his loans by providing executive security at a party in Rosedale and received 6 months severance pay after being fired. His termination came after his boss received a visit from the Biker Enforcement Unit informing him of Atwell's connection to the HELLS Angels. Feeling trapped, Atwell couldn't leave the club without repaying his debt from legal fees, and he was was fired from his security job because of his Hells Angels ties. He wanted out, believing the club was not straightforward but had to tread carefully. In February 2004, the charges against him were stayed when a judge ruled that police hadn't obtained a proper warrant for the mug that recorded him selling drugs. However, this didn't clear his debt, leading Atwell to double down and become a full-time biker, directly involved in selling drugs. He now made around $1,700 per kilo delivering cocaine stashed in a KFC bag. Although he hated his new life, losing friends and growing distant from his family, Atwell continued to do his job diligently and rose through the ranks of the Hells Angels downtown Toronto chapter, becoming the sergeant-at-arms and a full-patch angel, one of the highest levels in the club. His resentment towards the Hells Angels members grew as he realized most were there to make money without caring if anyone, including a fellow angel, got hurt. Desperate to escape, Atwell found a potential way out through an old friend from his security days, who introduced him to two RCMP officers. They wanted him to become an informant, revealing how the club operated and who was responsible for what. However, they offered little reward and almost no protection, meaning discovery by the club would be a death sentence. Despite the risks, Atwell, desperate for a way out, decided to explore the option. After the first test run, David Atwell realized the RCMP officers lacked the necessary resources to tackle a group as big and powerful as the Hells Angels. He confided in a couple of Hells Angels members who warned him against being an informant for the RCMP. Despite this, he met with the RCMP contacts a few more times before concluding they weren't qualified and finally moved on. Still seeking a way out, Atwell got a second chance when approached by two officers from the Ontario Provincial Police Biker Enforcement Unit. This unit was part of a multi-jurisdictional task force aimed at destabilizing outlaw motorcycle gangs, particularly the Hells Angels. These officers were professionals who understood the importance of having a full patch member on the inside for their plans to succeed. They gave Atwell a set of questions to assess his readiness to cooperate, and he provided all the right answers. The Biker Enforcement Unit tried to dig deeper, but Atwell remained silent until a deal could be finalized, leading them to suggest he get a lawyer. Since Atwell couldn't afford one, the Biker Enforcement Unit arranged one for him. Atwell learned they were organizing a multi-jurisdictional operation called Project Develop, targeting the Hells Angels and associated clubs in Ontario. They offered him an 18-month deal, paying him $1,800 per week, along with $15,000 per month into a trust, and an additional $1,000 per week for any post-arrest testimony he provided. The entire deal would amount to around $500,000. With Atwell also being placed in witness protection at the end of the 18 months. It was the biggest deal of its kind in biker club history, but Atwell initially turned it down, believing he wanted to do what was right, not for financial gain. However, a friend convinced him that he needed the money, and he eventually accepted the deal to become a police informant. In March 2005, Atwell started his job as one of the 3 or more informants under Project Develop. He led the police to secure multiple vital busts by wearing a wire and recording conversations within his chapter. The first mission occurred in September 2005, when some Hells Angels members approached him with a plan to kill a police informant. Although no arrests were made at that time, it marked the beginning of his undercover work. Another mission in April 2006 had him record a conversation with Juicy, an Iranian immigrant who had fought in the Iran-Iraq War and was one of the rare non-white members of the Hells Angels due to his expertise. In the conversation, Juicy revealed his collection of submachine guns. Atwell continued to secretly record conversations, even with his friends Donnie Peterson and Doug Miles, who had helped him get into the Hells Angels. Peterson was the best man at Atwell's wedding, and Atwell served as the master of ceremony at Miles's wedding. Life as an informant became increasingly difficult for Atwell. He had to lie about his activities, leading to strained relationships with his family and friends. Despite this, he continued to participate in the usual activities of the Angels, although he visibly consumed more drugs during this period. Atwell's job became more complicated when an informant from another police operation, Project Tandem, leaked information, leading to a raid and the arrest of multiple Hells Angels members on September 28, 2006. This heightened tensions within the Angels, especially since the informant turned out to be the treasurer of their Oshawa chapter. In February 2007, David Atwell recorded a series of conversations with Lauren Campbell, a new member of the Hells Angels Toronto chapter, where Campbell detailed plans about a shipment of cocaine he intended to sell. This led to a police interception of several shipments of a date rape drug. The bust belonged to Juicy and put him in a $100,000 debt. As time went by, Donnie Peterson discovered from a police source that there was a rat within their chapter. Doug Miles confronted Atwell, noticing he was buying too many drugs from too many people at once, a classic informer behavior. Miles warned Atwell that the Angels were contemplating killing him if they found out he was the rat. A terrified but quick-thinking Atwell responded by acting pissed off and was immediately pulled by the OPP Biker Enforcement Unit. Later events, and the increasingly cold reception by his fellow Angels, led Atwell and the OPP Biker Enforcement Unit to realize that his time was running out, and he needed to be put in the Witness Protection Program as soon as possible. In April 2007, based on information provided by Atwell, the police conducted multiple raids on Hells Angels clubhouses around Ontario. This led to the seizure of drugs worth close to $3 million property and over $500,000 in cash. Additionally, 39 Hells Angels members faced up to 169 charges, though many of these charges were eventually dropped. It took over 2 years for the trials of those Hells Angels to commence. During that time, Atwell continued to live under witness protection without the possibility of getting a good job, a house, or even connecting with the outside world due to the fear of being caught by a Hells Angel. It was a truly lonely life for Atwell, who found it hard to form relationships outside of the ones he made with the police authorities. The trials finally commenced in September 2010, with David Atwell being the star witness for the Crown. 5 Hells Angels, including John Neal, the president of the downtown Toronto chapter, were convicted on charges related to dealing a date rape drug, cocaine, and possession of illegal weapons. However, all the accused were acquitted of charges of belonging to a criminal organization. It was one of Canada's longest trials, and Atwell spent many days in court testifying against some of his old friends while looking them in the eye. His ordeal only ended on May 22, 2011, with Neal, Juicy, and Atwell's old friend Miles being convicted of trafficking a date rape drug, and Campbell convicted of trafficking cocaine. Despite these convictions, Atwell still lives in isolation under witness protection. He has managed to grant a few interviews to share his side of the story, and even served as a witness for the Crown in 2018 in an attempt to seize 3 Hells Angels clubhouses in Vancouver, British Columbia. Atwell continues to live in fear of being found by members of the Hells Angels and is at the mercy of his handlers, who decide where he can stay, who he can work with, and even who he can talk to.